All right. Thanks everyone for hopping on our team call. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about time management. And if you've watched my video on the team page or seen my post lately, I've been talking about this a lot. So I apologize if this is like the third time you've heard it from me, but hopefully it's helpful and good stuff. And then we will definitely open it up for discussion because I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and like fears around time management as well. Because I think, and we'll get there, this is something that maybe as you're building your business becomes like a fearful thing. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to keep up? I'm already struggling and I only have this small team. Like, how in the world am I going to do this if I'm going to grow a big team? So let me kind of just start off with talking about what is time management. So I really don't even believe time management is a thing because you cannot control time, right? None of us have any control over time. God gave us 24 hours in a day. Everyone has the same amount of time, and that is what we have to work with. If we needed 36 hours, he would have given us 36 hours, right? Like a lot of times I was like, oh, if I just didn't need to sleep, I could get so much done. But the truth is, we have these hours. We need to sleep. We need to spend time with our families. We need to work our business, all the things within that time. So it's really not time management, it is self management. Time management is self management. We have to learn how to manage ourselves. So I think it's so important, not just for your Plexus business, but for your life in general, to think about that and think about what your priorities are. And it really starts with the question like, what do I really want to do? What is my mission? What is my life goal? And from there, you're able to establish your priorities. Now, I have to break this down big time into like bite-sized pieces. So I'm going to give you guys just some tips on what time management, self-management looks like for me. I think that it's different for everyone. And I tend to be on the like very organized side of the seesaw, and other people are maybe more on the like free spirited, go with the flow side. But I think whatever your style is, it is important to have a system down for yourself that you set your intentions for the week, for the day, and hold yourself accountable. Whether you're free spirited, like don't use that as an excuse to not be organized, right? Okay. And don't use perfectionism as an excuse to be like, well, I can't do it all, so I'm not going to do anything, right? I feel like those are the two sides of the equation. So some practical tips. I am a huge planner person. I think planning is really important. So I use I've sent this to a lot of you guys as gifts, but my Clever Fox planner, but I take 2 hours, an hour or 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, and I make myself some tea and I get my cozy blanket and I sit down and plan out the week. I pencil and paper write down everything I'm doing, from planning out my IPA, which will save you guys a ton of time. If you don't do that, like seriously saves you so much time. My workouts are like dinner plan for the week, following up with current customers and ambassadors. It all gets written down. And what that does for me is helps me not like crash land into Monday morning. And a lot of you work like outside of Plexus, you're teachers, you're realtors, you've got all this stuff going on. Like it's a lot, right? You only have maybe a small snippet of time to work your business. So when it's Monday and you flip to your page and you're ready to sit down for 30 minutes or 15 minutes and just crank out your Plexus work, you don't have to take all that time of like going through your back office and, oh, who am I going to follow up with? Or going to Facebook, who am I going to reach out to? Because you already wrote it down and you're just going to crank out your messages or your phone calls or whatever you need to do. That seriously saves me so much time. So that's my first tip. Another tip is to not consume social media excessively. Okay. So I think we all enjoy a good scroll through Instagram, see what all the celebrities are doing. It's fun. And it's almost like a form of just like relaxing for a lot of people, but don't confuse doing that with working your business or working Plexus, because it's not. It's actually a huge time waster. So I have to really set parameters around scrolling social media, and because you go down the rabbit hole, right? Like it's like you go one thing and then it takes you somewhere else, and before you know it, like an hour has passed and you haven't done any work. I think a lot of us are busy working our business, but we're not actually working our business. We're kind of just doing these time waster things. So not scrolling social media, and then honoring your priorities. So this has been something where I've made a big change. Like over the summer, my schedule was pretty open. I kind of worked my business all day. But when we started our school year, I homeschool my 3 kids. I made a decision to really not be on my phone at all from 8:30 in the morning till after lunch, like around 1 o'clock. And I was nervous, like, oh my goodness, like people need me during that time, my team, people are asking for comments on their posts and all this stuff. But I had to go back to my priorities. And one of the reasons why I do Plexus is so that I can be home with my kids, homeschooling them. So for me, the way I honor my priorities is spending that focused time with them and realizing that all the Plexus stuff can wait. So literally, like, the phone is off unless I'm getting like a bunch of calls in a row that feels like an emergency. I'm really not answering. And that is okay. You want to build a business that serves your life, not a life that serves your business. And I was just listening to Bob Heilig, and he says, you don't want to get to the top of the ladder in your company and realize that it's leaning against the wrong house. And I love that analogy. Like, you can hustle, 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 hustle. But what if you get to the top and you've burned through everything that was actually important to you? Like, I don't want to hit diamond in the company, but have totally neglected my kids for the past 4 years. So I think just evaluating, being clear on your priorities is huge, so that you're building a business that serves your life and not the other way around. And just realize it's okay to not answer right away. It is okay to let your team just hold on a sec because you are cooking dinner for your family or you're out on a run or whatever. It's not the end of the world. And a lot of times for the newer people on your team, when you just don't answer right away, they figure it out. Like, they go in the help center, or they, find the thing they were looking for in the back office. And it's actually kind of empowering to them to just be able to find their own information. Of course, you're there and you have those set times where you go back and you answer the questions and you check in, and you guys see me doing that, but it's not constant. And I think it's so important for you guys that maybe like are starting off with a smaller team right now to just get that like ingrained in the way that you work your business now, so that you're setting yourself up for really good habits. And then you'll be able to keep growing because you won't experience burnout. And burnout happens when you're just constant. You're just constantly working, or you're constantly feeling torn in a bunch of different directions. So those are some of my kind of practical tips. So let me just talk a little bit about maybe some fears, and you can just like nod if this like sounds like something you've experienced. So I feel like a lot of us see the time that we're working Plexus now, and maybe like you are overwhelmed by the number of messages you get in a day, or the number of groups that you are in, and the group chats and the Facebook groups and all the things. And you're like, holy cow, I don't know if I want to do this at an emerald level or at a diamond level. Like, I can't even imagine how time consuming it would be. Does anyone like have that fear? Yeah. Okay. Some hands. Yeah. Okay. So yes, I had the same fear. But I will tell you that the more I've gotten into the business, it's just like it totally changes, and the focus becomes on building systems for your team and teaching your team to lead their teams. And it is really not this like consuming, all encompassing thing. Now, my journey has changed. When I first started Plexus, I was working. I had literally like a 3-month-old. My littlest was very little, and the 2 other kids. And I built my business on 30 minutes a day. Like, I literally only did Plexus 30 minutes a day, like nook and cranny, a little bit in the evening. And so that has changed because Plexus has allowed me to quit my job. I just do this. So now I'm working 3 or 4 hours a day. But even with that 30 minutes a day, I was able to build a solid base of my business that then continued to grow. So it really becomes about duplication and systems and helping your team be responsible for their own people on their team. So that is so important. That's why we're building this as a business, not a job. Like, if you can't leave and the thing runs by itself, You don't have a business, you have a job. So when we're first starting off, it's very jobby. Like we have to be there for all our people, but you're hopefully coaching and empowering your team so that you can kind of pull back and the thing continues to run on its own. So I just wanted to talk about that little fear, and hopefully alleviate that for you guys, because I don't want that to be something that holds you back to think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have no time. Like this kind of business should give you time freedom. This should be something that is something you can set in motion, empower your team, and then have way more time freedom as an emerald, sapphire, diamond than you even did as a gold ambassador. So any thoughts on that before I move on? I feel like there's conversation there that we probably should have.
No, I think this is great. Like, I really needed to hear this because I've been like second guessing. Like, is this what I meant to do? And I always pray on it and always ask for signs and things like that. But I just keep thinking, like, do I want, like, my husband asked me, he's like, isn't it daunting just to have a post every day, to have to be glued to your phone? And I've like been thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not the best thing in the world to constantly have your phone on you 24/7. And granted, there's like periods of time where I don't, um, but the majority of the time, like, yeah, it's right there. So hearing that is nice and kind of reassuring, just because I I've really been thinking, like, do I want this forever?
Yeah,
So
I think you really have to think like, okay, what are my boundaries with my phone, right? Because like we do this thing like 80-90% from our phones. So I will tell you, like 8:30 to 12, my phone is in the kitchen and I'm in the schoolroom with the kids. And then I have at least 2 or 3 nights a week where I'm hanging out with my husband. Like we hang out with the kids, I put them to bed, and like we sit and talk or whatever. And I have my phone off or out of the room. And we talk about it before the week happens, like, hey, my unplugged nights are Monday and Wednesday and Friday. And we're like, okay, so he can kind of work around that too. And I am not answering you guys during that time. And that's totally fine. So I would make sure you have those times, like make sure you have the phone off times, and know that like the world will not end. Like it will be okay. Plus we have each other, right? Like Nicole, if one of your people's really having a problem, Victoria can step in, I can step in. But yeah, you have to be able to like turn it off. You don't want to be working 24/7 because you will burn out for sure, or you'll hate it. Um, Go ahead, Sarah.
So I just wanted to chime in on this because I too kind of have this like internal conflict of like, okay, I was never this bad on my phone before, because especially when you first start out with all of the different chats and groups and things, you just feel like you have to pay attention to all of it. And it took me a long time to give into like muting chats for like a couple of hours or whatever it was. It actually wasn't until I was taking classes that I muted the chats because I had to, because it was just like breaking my focus. I'd be working classes and trying to learn. And that's when it really like, okay, I really need to pay attention to putting my phone somewhere else in another room, because when you think about, okay, we have to be glued to our phones, that's not entirely true. If we have our phones that often, I'm willing to bet that 80% of the time at least, we're not even really doing work, like actual work that is doing anything at all. And it's really hard to like come to grips with, because you're like, oh my God, I'm wasting all this time, one. And two, then you realize not only was that a waste, but it was time that I wasn't present with my kids or present in my life or doing things for myself. Like there's so much of our life that is stolen from that. So I think that even if just starting out, this is just something that's popped into my head, like take a tally when you're on your phone of what you're actually doing and really try to break that habit. I just last week set a limit of how long I want to be on each app. And last week I met my limit, and I'm going to actually bring that down because I was kind of generous, because I'm like, wow, I didn't even want to click on it. I didn't even want to see, because I was like, I know that I mindlessly scroll. I literally got lost in Britney Spears conspiracy theories for like 2 hours the other night. I was like, what am I doing? I don't even know her. It doesn't even matter.
Right.
So like I am going to sit here and say I know that I do it, Britney Spears, seriously, like I was like
Yep.
concerned for her, like I was gonna get in my car and go get her. But I wasted all that time. What was I doing? I can't get that time back. And that's not the
Right.
first time that that's happened. So I think that that's such a good thing to bring up, Nicole. But the way that you said it was like, do I really want to do this thing that makes me so glued to my phone? If the thing isn't making you glued to your phone, like set those boundaries, like you were saying, set the time to work and have that be when you're on your phone, or choose certain times just to use like a laptop so that you're not scrolling and distracted by everything else. Sorry.
Right. No,
It's
that's
been on my
awesome.
mind. So
Yeah, no, the Britney Spears thing is a perfect example.
Can I
Yeah.
piggyback off that?
Mhm.
Okay, so when she said like get on the laptop, so one of the things that I do, so Brittany, you mentioned Sundays you plan out, right? So I do the same thing. Like, well, at the beginning of the month, I go through and I write down all the subscriptions that are gonna send out for my level ones, and I write, I do it probably like 5 days ahead of time to like check in with them, right? And then as I am sometimes scrolling social media or different people come to my mind, I write it in my planner. But then on each morning when I wake up, I don't even go to my phone. I just go to my laptop and I start typing myself an email and I start typing out all the messages I want to send to people, because that eliminates me like getting distracted by other messages, or like, starting to scroll. So I literally just type out the email, I send it to myself, and then I just copy and paste and send it to people. And it's like, okay, by 6:30 in the morning, my messages are sent out. Now some people respond right away, but if I'm at the preschool that morning, I don't respond till evening time. Sometimes I don't even respond if it's not urgent until that next morning. So that's been really helpful. And then Sarah, yeah, I was going to say, I set a timer on my Instagram because I find that I scroll that. So after an hour and a half, which seems, I don't know, whatever, it's an hour and a half, don't judge either way, but that's what it is now. And so it'll come up and let me know. And then lastly, I wanted to say too, sorry, all these thoughts that are so just, I think it's a good
No, it's good.
conversation to
It's
have.
good.
But I feel like no matter what profession you have, our world right now is so virtual, like more than ever. And my husband can probably hear me, but I mean, he's so connected virtually all the time too. I mean, I see him at night, like checking his phone, checking his emails. So it's not just Plexus. Like our world is so virtual right now. It is so easy to have everybody so interconnected for most professions. And just like with any profession, yeah, if you don't give yourself a break or you don't find boundaries, you are going to be burnt out. So just know that like, no matter what, I think I was trying to communicate this to Shannon the other day. Like, I think a lot of it comes within yourself and like the type of personality that you have. So like for me, I have major FOMO. So I'm always wanting to catch up on conversations, but I don't need to do that. That's a waste of time. So I really need to work on just letting that go. And I'm also very controlling. Like I like to have that control, but I realize that I can't always be the one giving my team answers. Like they can help each other because they are very capable, like more than capable of doing that. So I need to release some control and let others take over. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, I think a lot of our fears come out with time management, whether like, I can't do this because there's just not enough time. And for me, it's like, well, I have some fears about my ability to show up as a leader. So if I'm not constantly like, I get a comment on everyone's post that asks for it, I'm like, I failed them. No, I was homeschooling. Like, it's okay, So I think a lot of it is just recognizing what's actual, like, commitments, things we need to show up for, because there are some, and what's like, oh, that's just fear and I just need to get over it, because a lot of the time that's it for me. I love this
Can
one.
I just say one more thing before
Oh, yeah,
we go on
go.
to another topic? I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be long-winded this time. But it's not our fault either. I was watching the documentary on this, and the way that all of these apps and social media in general is programmed, if let's say Pinterest, we'll just use that as an example. If you haven't been on Pinterest in a long time, they're all competing for our attention. We are their consumer. So your phone is constantly pinging you, like you're constantly getting notifications because there are people whose jobs are to distract you. Their job is to get your attention and to bring you back to the apps. So one thing that might help is all the apps that you have on your phone and different things that you have notification settings for that actually show up as notifications. If you don't, yes, Shannon, I was like, I want to rewatch it. But if you, sorry, but if you go and into all those notifications and turn off the ones that you don't need Pinterest to tell you that somebody pinned something or you might like these 21 pins. You don't need that. Just keep on exactly what you need, and then you won't feel like you need to go pick up your phone as often because you heard it go off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so good. You're right. And back to the Pinterest thing, I saw a long time ago a little meme kind of making fun of Pinterest. And it's like, what is Pinterest? And it was a guy talking. And it said, it's when my wife stares at her phone for 8 hours and then we eat salad out of a mason jar. And that was like burned into my brain because it was so funny and so true. Do not let you working Plexus be like that, right? Because we hear so many times like my husband is unsupportive or my partner, my whatever is unsupportive. Well, yeah, because you're staring at your phone constantly, ignoring them, and you're not actually working, so you're not making any money, right? So they come to resent it. And then you say you're stressed and overwhelmed. So a lot of times, like your spouse or whatever is trying to protect you from this thing that seems to be hurting you. It's sucking up all your time, and then you're unhappy about it because you're stressed. So, and it's like a vicious cycle. And we have to just figure out the effective things that move the needle. And if you're not in the IPA challenge, like those are the things, right? Like making your list, mindset work, sending those messages, reaching out, adding value to people. Like those are the things that move the needle on your business. Do those things first before you scroll, before you do anything else. And if that feels hard, then take some time, beginning of the week, weekend, whatever, and plan it out so that you can just do focused work. You can actually work way less than you think you need to if it's efficient, if it's focused, and if you're doing those hard things that a lot of times we avoid. We keep pushing it to the side and doing the easy things, like, oh, I'm expanding my network, I'm adding friends. That's fine, but that can't be all day, right? Like there has to be like the hard stuff too. So yeah, I think the Pinterest example is perfect. Don't stare at your phone for 8 hours and then eat salad out of a mason jar. Just let that mental picture sit with you this week. But does anyone else have like practical time management tips that you want to share? Because yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
So I don't have any tips, but more looking for advice. Because like 95% of my team is in a different time zone than me. So like when I'm, sending out my messages, they're already at work. By the time I get to them, they're already in bed. So I struggle because then when I get to a message, I'm like, oh, we're on the same time. We're 10. I can do it right now. But then, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, supposed to be watching my daughter doing these things. And really I'm on my phone when I shouldn't be because they're on their lunch break or something. So I just struggle with that part of it.
Yeah, no, that's a unique circumstance. I think that even your team, like understanding that and knowing that, and you can tell them like, here's the times where I can chat, maybe let them know like, hey, my Plexus hours, like when I'm working are, whatever, 10 to 12 Eastern. And then, here's like 2 time frames, 1 a.m., 1 p.m. Like, do either of those work for you? Because I can go back and forth like during those times, or set up phone calls. And guys, if you are able to hop on the phone with people, I know it's not always possible because of kids and all that kind of stuff, but you can get through like 2 weeks worth of texting back and forth in a 15-minute phone call. So it's way more time efficient, especially with new ambassadors who need like onboarding and a little bit of training, or potentials who you're like going through all the information and like back and forth about like, well, what's in this product? Well, what's in this product? Just be like, hey, when can you hop on the phone? Because that 15 or 20 minutes, you'll do like 2 weeks worth of texting. But yeah, Kristen, I would set like business hours for yourself. Like, hey, even if it's not every day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from this time to this time, I'm wide open, guys, for chats and whatever else.
Okay, yeah, I might do that because it's like getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this like this.
Right. Yeah.
forever.
The other thing is too, like if you tell your team, like, hey, if you guys have questions throughout the day, like still reach out and put them in the team chat because like Victoria or I can answer them for you since we're on this time zone. So, I mean, I don't know how much of it is individual messaging that you're doing like for personal reach outs, but if it's product stuff, encourage them to use the team chat and we can help you out there too.
Definitely
Right.
will. Thank you.
Yeah. And you guys can always use your upline. Like, for example, Victoria is the director of a preschool. So she's super busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So her team knows, just like come to me during those times, or at least do like a group chat so that I'm more likely to answer, and then she'll catch up when she can. Like, that's kind of how we do this. So don't be afraid. Like, whoever your upline is, like, go up a few levels if needed, because we all help each other out. Any other tips or questions? This obviously isn't like the guide to managing your life. It's just some tips and ideas, but a little specific to your business. And just like I have failed at this majorly along the way. So I'm just sharing things that like have helped me get back on track. And a lot of it has just been mentally coming to a place to understand like, okay, I can't do it all. So let me write down my priorities and honor those things that are most important. One other important tip is you shouldn't be waking up and be on your phone immediately. Like, you should have 30 minutes or 60 minutes of peace and quiet. Okay, see you, Kristen, where you're not like immediately like jumping into Plexus, right? So for me, I get up super early. That's part of my routine. That's part of my time management. But I read my Bible, I do my little personal growth stuff, whatever. I have some quiet time. And then I will, answer the messages from the night before. I also go to bed early. You guys know this, like the messages are rolling in at 10 p.m. and I'm not responding. So whatever your priorities are, sleep, personal growth, time with your kids, time with your significant other, make sure those come first. And then your Plexus time is just super efficient because, you only have so many hours in a day. You can't be scrolling all day. It's 8:59, one more minute. Any other tips or questions?
I just appreciate that this whole talk about it, because I've really been struggling with it too. I feel like I'm on my phone constantly, and it's like I just am always trying to find like the missing link to finding the next person, and like I just am always constantly searching. So, and I really feel like, and my kids will be like, mommy, you're on your phone. And that like really gets me when my kids notice, Yeah. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And you are in a season of a lot of growth right now, right? So there's times when you're growing like crazy that it's a lot more intense. And then you have to like come off that and like let it be calm for a while.
Yeah.
Like when you
They
can.
have questions, and I am like still trying to learn. So I'm like,
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like you never work harder than at like the senior silver, gold, senior gold level. Like, honestly, that's when I was working the hardest, because you're doing so much, because you have so many level ones and you're trying to recruit. That is hard work, because you are the person, like you are the recruiter and all that. Once you get to like a Ruby senior, Ruby emerald level, it's more about helping your team and equipping your team. Like, yes, we're always still building our networks, recruiting and all that, but it just like it shifts. So don't feel like, oh my word, I'm going to have to work this hard forever and ever and ever. This is a season, but when you keep consistent and you push through that, like once you get past senior gold, it does change a lot and become easier in a sense, harder in some ways, but easier in some ways too. Okay, well, great talk, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And we can definitely keep talking about this as we go. If you guys have questions, send them in our group chats and stuff, and we can go back and answer them too. Let me stop the